The simple acts of goodness. The sun was setting, casting a golden hue over the small town of Milford, where Anna had lived her entire life. The streets were quiet, save for the soft hum of a few passing cars, and the air carried the faint scent of freshly cut grass. It was the kind of evening that felt like a pause in time, a brief moment to catch one's breath before the busyness of the next day began. For Anna, it was a perfect evening to reflect on something that had been on her mind for a while, what it meant to be a good person. Anna didn't think of herself as special. She didn't have grand accomplishments or a life full of dramatic changes. She worked as a librarian at the town's small library, a place where people from all levels of society came to borrow books, seek advice, or simply sit in peace. She had a small circle of friends, a cozy apartment, and a quiet routine that gave her comfort. But lately she had been wondering if the small things she did mattered. Did kindness and thoughtfulness add up to something more than just a collection of fleeting moments? Was there a deeper meaning to being good, or was it just something she did because it felt right? As Anna walked home that evening, she passed the park where the children often played after school. Tonight the park was still, except for an older woman sitting on a bench near the swings. Her back hunched slightly as she gazed out over the empty playground. Anna recognized her immediately. It was Mrs. Jennings, the elderly neighbor who lived 2 houses down from Anna's apartment. "Hello, Mrs. Jennings," Anna called, her voice warm and friendly. Mrs. Jennings looked up, a faint smile creasing her weathered face. "Ah, Anna dear, you caught me in a bit of a daydream. Just thinking about how much this place has changed over the years." Anna took a step closer, sensing that Mrs. Jennings might need some company. "I've noticed the park has been quieter lately. Are you feeling okay?" The older woman sighed. "It's just the usual. I don't get out much these days, and it's been hard to keep track of everything. My knees, you know." She laughed softly, her voice carrying the weight of years. "But I'm fine, dear, just a little lonely sometimes." Anna sat down beside her on the bench. The cool evening breeze was gentle, and the sky above was painted in soft oranges and purples. "Well, I'm glad I ran into you. I always enjoy our little chats." Mrs. Jennings chuckled, her eyes twinkling with a knowing glint. "You always were a good one for conversation, Anna, ever since you were a little girl, coming over to help me with my groceries." Anna smiled at the memory. She had been young then, perhaps no older than 10, when she first started helping Mrs. Jennings carry her shopping bags. The older woman had often been too tired to manage them on her own, and Anna, eager to be helpful, had made it a regular habit. "I didn't mind. It was nice to spend time with you. You always had such interesting stories to tell." "Ah, but you were always the listener, and that's an art of its own, my dear," Mrs. Jennings said. She reached out and patted Anna's hand. "Do you still visit your father's grave?" Anna blinked, a sudden shift in the conversation, pulling at something deep inside her. "I do every now and then," she answered slowly. Her voice quieter. She hadn't been to the cemetery for a while, but the thought of it brought back memories of her father. His gentle smile, the way he'd always taken time for others, his unwavering kindness, even in the hardest of times. He was always so kind to everyone. "He taught you well, didn't he?" Mrs. Jennings said. "A good person like him never goes unnoticed." His goodness lives on in you. Anna felt a lump form in her throat. I try to be good, to be kind, but sometimes I wonder if it even matters. I don't do anything extraordinary. I'm not changing the world, I'm just me. Mrs. Jennings turned to face her fully, her expression serious now. Anna, my dear, being a good person isn't about grand gestures. It's about the small things, the everyday moments. You help someone carry their bags, listen when someone needs to talk, offer a smile when it's needed the most. That's how the world becomes a better place. Not in one big act, but in the countless small ones that accumulate over time. Anna nodded slowly, taking in Mrs. Jennings' words. She had always known that kindness mattered, but hearing it spoken with such conviction made her realize something. Goodness wasn't about accolades or recognition. It was about the quiet moments, the ones that didn't demand praise, but created ripples in the lives of others. Just then a man walked past them on the path, carrying a large box of tools. His brow was furrowed, and he looked exhausted. Mrs. Jennings gave Anna a knowing look, and without a word, they both stood up and approached the man. "Excuse me, sir," Anna called out. "Would you like some help with that?" The man looked at them, a bit surprised, but then smiled faintly. "That's very kind of you, but I think I've got it." Anna stepped closer. "You're carrying quite a load. It'll be faster with two people, don't you think?" He hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "I suppose you're right. I'm just finishing up some work at the church, and it's been a long day." Together, they carried the heavy box back to the man's truck. As they set it down, he thanked them with genuine gratitude. "I didn't expect anyone to notice, but I appreciate the help." "It's no trouble at all," Anna said, feeling a sense of warmth spread through her chest. As they walked back toward the bench, she realized that this small act, just offering a little assistance, had made a difference in someone's day. It didn't take much, but it mattered. When she returned to Mrs. Jennings' side, she felt a new understanding settle within her. "You're right, you know. It's the small things that count. Maybe I've been too focused on thinking I need to do more. But just being there for someone, even in the simplest ways, that's what makes the world better, isn't it?" Mrs. Jennings smiled softly, her eyes reflecting the fading light of the sunset. "Exactly. You don't need to change the world to make a difference. Just be a good person, one step at a time, and you'll create a ripple effect that reaches far beyond what you can see." As the sky darkened and the stars began to twinkle above them, Anna felt at peace. She didn't need to be extraordinary. She only needed to be kind, to be present, and to offer what she could when the opportunity arose. And in that, she found a quiet strength, a knowing that goodness, though simple, was always worthwhile. As Anna walked home that evening, she couldn't help but smile. The world might not notice every small act of kindness, but she would, and maybe that was enough.